some dispute, but I think 7th time this has been done. So this is a joint program from the Clay Center, the University Career Services, the Equity Society, and the Villanova Financial Club, which is a group in New York up on Wall Street who, on their own volition, I think, got together and formed a club with their alma mater in mind. And one of the first things they did, I think, was decide to come down and help out. And it's funny, I was here the first year, I've been here the last couple of years, I've been to most of them. And I look out and everybody's got their suits on today, so about half the crowd the first year I was here was dressed like they dressed for school. And they all sat in the back, so it's nice to see you all up front with your suits on. So you've learned something already, probably from past panels. I'm supposed to Brenda wants me to tell you guys you have a bunch of materials today. You've got a careers in financial markets. This is great. If you want to look through, there's not just sales and trading on Wall Street. There are lots of jobs in the financial service industry. So this will kind of give you a roadmap through that beyond what you're going to hear today. I would keep it with me. It gives you a lot of great feedback on what you should be looking at. So it's a nice magazine. Everybody has one. So keep it. Don't throw it away. Don't trash it. You have a list of all the employers that are here today to network with. So I would also keep that. And this is a list of lesser known Wall Street credit boutiques, which you might not think about, but there's also a lot of firms that aren't necessarily the big, 10 or 12 firms that you think about when you think about Wall Street. So another good resource. So these are some great resources when you're starting to look through and try to figure out your career path. I will say it's more important than ever that you're here, and congratulations to everybody who came, because it's a great time to have good interviewing skills. I think the world has been through a tough time the last couple of years. I think Wall Street needs great talent more than ever, so hopefully they can get together with you. The world's not going to work well unless Wall Street works well, so regardless of what you hear, it's best every day. So without further ado, nobody wants to listen to me. I want to introduce our I guess, host for the night, Bill Donnell, and he's going to introduce the rest of the panel. So, enjoy. Thank you, guys.
My name is Bill Donnell. I'm a 77 graduate of Villanova. I graduated from the business school. I put 3 kids through Villanova. The last one graduated in 2009. And I've worked at Merrill Lynch my entire career. I've been in the private banking area of Merrill Lynch. But before I get started, this is the 7th time that we've done this panel. It's the brainchild of George Coleman and myself, another fellow named Bill Barron, who's not here. Just by show of hands, who was here in any of the last 2 years? Wow, probably close to half. And seniors? All right, so you're all in the middle of interviewing right now for your Wall Street career, right? September, October. And how about juniors? A pretty good representation, probably 25%. You'll be interviewing in December, January, and February. And then the balance looks more like you're over here, freshmen and sophomores. This program probably will have the most benefit for the freshmen and sophomores because you have so much in front of you. Let me just take you through a couple of points. I want to turn the program over to my panelists. By the way, hold your questions until the end. We'll try to answer all your questions at the end. Most of us are part of the Villanova Club, which is a club that started in 1982. It's 85 Villanovans that work on Wall Street. In the past 3 years, we've networked in 200 Villanova students into networks and jobs on Wall Street. We've probably generated 600 interviews in the last 3 years. And pretty much we're all about giving back. We run probably 5 programs for Villanova students. And the reason why you'll hear George talk a little bit at the end about this is someone helped from Villanova each one of us get ahead in our careers. We all remember it, and we live by that, so we try to give back. Every club tries to give back every year. Over the last 3 years, and this changes almost every year, we've learned a couple things. One thing that's been constant is Villanova students do very, very well on Wall Street. Villanova is certainly one of the top 10 universities hired on Wall Street. Let me just give you a couple of numbers for those that were here last year. I'm just going to repeat it for those that weren't here. You have 360 Villanova alums at Bank of America Merrill Lynch. You have 500 at Morgan Stanley Smith Barney. You have 200 in Citi. You have 100 or so at Credit Suisse First Boston George Works, 175 at Goldman, and the beat just goes on. You cannot go to a trading desk anywhere on Wall Street and not run into a Villanova alum. The second thing that we've learned, and this is only since 2008, because in 2008, the world on Wall Street changed, it probably changed forever, but it's certainly changed, is the growth of small firms. And a lot of our alums left the larger firms and either moved to smaller firms or actually started smaller firms. Firms like Broadpoint Bleacher, Seaport Securities, MKP Capital, and there's literally hundreds of them. And these Villanova alums stick together. I know one firm that's starting on October 1st, started by two partners. They are only hiring, okay? The new hires are only going to be Villanova alums. That's all they're going to hire. The entire firm's going to be Villanova alums. So it's, Villanova is really well represented in these small firms. You need to consider them as you look. The third thing, and this is something that George and I were talking about last year, is if you look at, and George is going to take apart an investment bank for you. If you look at the jobs on Wall Street, sales and trading probably is 10 to 15% of the job opportunities on Wall Street, but probably 70% of you are going to apply for these 10% of what's available and overlook the other 80 or 90%. You know, some careers like operations, wealth management, compliance, investment banking, prime brokering, clearing. There's a lot of opportunities where you can make a lot of money on Wall Street, and it's not just sales and trading. So we're going to talk about that today. So the goal today is basically threefold. One is we want to shed some light on the interview process, because as good as you are, you can be better. It's very, very competitive. Number two, we want to show how you can be more competitive, and George will do this on the on-campus interview so you can kind of break out and then a super day. And then we want to talk about this 80%, the other 80% of the jobs available on Wall Street, so like some of the things I just listed. So we've brought together some panelists, and one thing we all have in common. We all went to Villanova. We all work on Wall Street. Everybody up here interviews and hires. And the combined experience up on the stage is somewhere around 125 years. So if you think about, anyone, if you think about how much you learned grammar school, middle school, high school, and college, most of the people on here started working on Wall Street before you were born. So we've got a lot of experience. If you've got questions, the answers are going to be up here. So from my left and your right, I'll just introduce everybody, and then I'll come up and talk. George Coleman graduated right around me, 78 grad, accounting major. He's a managing director at Credit Suisse First Boston. He co-heads equities for the Americas. Basically, he's got a lot of people report to him. There's a couple of thousand people that report to him. He's a member of the Investment Banking Council and the Global Equity Management Committee at Credit Suisse. He started Credit Suisse in 1986 from a small tax shelter firm, Integrated Resources. He's had two children come through here. What George's going to do is he's going to talk about diagramming an investment bank, showing you what's available inside of an investment bank. He's going to take you through the entire interview process and how you can be more competitive, and just show you some general interviewing techniques. To George's left is Todd Sullivan. Todd is a 95 VU grad. He's an executive director in the operations division at Morgan Stanley, where he started in 2004. Todd is head of all derivative operations in the United States, in America, and globally. It's a very, very technical field. Prior to that, he worked 9 years at Lehman in fixed income. He has his BA from Villanova and his MBA from NYU Stern. And he's going to talk about some of the opportunities in the entire operations field. It's pretty fascinating, actually, when you listen to him talk about it. Bob Basse, next to Todd, is a managing director at Bank of New York Mellon. He is in business development and client management. And basically what Bob, when you really boil it down, is he advises hedge funds. We all heard of hedge funds here. He advises hedge funds on the operational side and the treasury side of their business. So in other words, if a hedge fund would do a trade, how do you complete that trade? How do you do it more efficiently without errors? It's the lifeline for a lot of hedge funds is someone like Bob. He sees a ton from where he sits. He spent 12 years at Australian bank, Westpac Bank, and before that he was at Chase and Kidder Peabody. He graduated here in '86 with his BA, his MBA from Notre Dame, then I don't know if any of you heard of what CFA is, Chartered Financial Analyst. He actually went on, had that done. That's probably one of the toughest tests you can take on Wall Street. And at the end, joining the panel for the questions and answers is Tony Viscardi, who's an MD in the FIG group, the Financial Institution Group at Deutsche Bank. He joined Deutsche Bank via Lehman in 2008. If you remember what 2008 was like. And he's responsible for client coverage of these financial institutions. Remember all the FDIC, the mergers that went on? If you peel back the onion, he was in the bottom of a lot of the most public mergers that were on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to George Coleman. George will take you through the interview process and follow up.
Thanks, Billy. I always see that hands again. Who are the freshmen and sophomores? That doesn't make sense. That many freshmen here? That's good. Go to the head of the class. I'm impressed. That's really good. So, Billy mentioned why we started doing this 7 years ago, and maybe it was like, I don't know, 9 or 10 years ago. The dean of the business school came to see me and asked me to see if Credit Suisse, or at the time it was called Credit Suisse First Boston, would interview here at Villanova and make it a target school. And so I agreed to do it, and I agreed to do it myself. And other people that Billy mentioned, this guy Bill Perry, who was at Bank of America at the time, and a guy named Ray Tierney, who has a grown-up job at Morgan Stanley. We all began to do this. And we came down here, and we interviewed, and we found that students weren't properly prepared for Wall Street when we benchmarked to the other schools, whether it's Notre Dame, Georgetown, Wharton, Yale, et cetera. And so that's kind of the genesis of this, to give you a background. And so I applaud you all for coming, and I will tell you, this is the most dressed up group of people I've ever seen at one of these functions. So hats off to you, and hats off to whoever asked you to do that. I thought what I would do is at first, every year we've done this, people really focus on the area that I'm lucky enough to work in. And so, there you go, looks better up there. In that upper left-hand corner, you see investment banking. And Credit Suisse has almost 49,000 employees around the world. The investment bank has 17,000. So everybody in this room, I would suspect, wants to be in that investment banking bucket. True? Okay? Because that's the glamorous thing, and that's the big trading room, and that's where the IPOs are, et cetera, et cetera. But the truth of the matter is, in my opinion, and as you can see from my colleagues here, that there are a ton of jobs, on Wall Street, in a bank. And so Mr. Janelle, or Bill here, he works in private banking. And he's had a perfectly good life. He's got a house in Florida. He's got 3 children through school. He's got nice cars. Let me tell you, he's got a pretty good life. And he went in a direction that other people weren't going in. Asset management, and every bank has one, but that whole world is companies like Fidelity and Vanguard and Wellington and Putnam. And they're terrific places to work, terrific opportunities, terrific careers. And then in the center is what we call shared services. And this is the part that I want you all to focus on. Because after the crisis and all the what we've gone through in the world, if you look like in the bottom there, it says risk. Risk is a growth area. What I do for a living is not a growth area. Sales and trading is not a growth area at the moment. There's lots of headwinds in the world, and we're not making as much money as we used to. You look at above that, it says operations. Above that, legal and compliance. The Obama administration, the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, the amount of new regulation the Dodd-Frank bill has put in front of us is enormous. Those are the areas investment banks are hiring people. And as Tony will tell you later, if you start there, make a name for yourself there, then the world's your oyster, and you can branch out into all the other parts of the bank. So my message is, that's an area of banks that are growing. That's an area that is probably easier to get a job than it is in that upper left-hand corner to be the next trader or the next derivative salesman on Wall Street. Now, if we get into the interview, and this is the part where I'm going to basically give you the answers to the test. This is, these slides I'm going to show you are the actual slides that I use or other people at Credit Suisse use when we say to our other managing directors and directors to come here on campus and interview, or to interview people. And by the way, you don't have to write any of this down. I'll give you the slides, or you can get them all from Brenda. So just, these are core competencies. These are 5 core competencies that, you're gonna have to be prepared for. And this is when we get back to why we came here 8 years ago, 7 years ago. It's because people hadn't thought about this in advance. So team player collaboration, it's pretty easy. It's the no jerk policy. You've got to be able to come in and demonstrate why we would want to work with you. Leadership right in the middle, very, very important. It's important to be in charge of the society, like you guys in the front row. That's important. It's important to be the head of your sorority or your fraternity. Billy was the head of the same fraternity I was in. We were in the same fraternity together, and we both were officers running the thing. If you're the captain of your team, if you can demonstrate that you guys have a lot of projects that you do in groups. You want to be that group leader so you can talk to us about things that you've done in your life where you've led. Problem solving, in intellect, grades matter. Everyone who's a freshman, raise your hand again. You hear me? Grades matter. Go to class. Guys who are juniors, don't go to Kelly's. We're not naive to it, Go to class. Get your assignments done. Grades matter. I can't tell you how many people come in and tell me, I have a 3-4 if I take my freshman year out. Does anybody resonate with anybody? And then the other part of intellect is sorting things out. You've got to be able to talk about times in your life where you were confronted with something and you figured it out. And I'll give you some examples of that later. Initiative and drive. We want people who want to work. You've got to be able to tell us and demonstrate to us that you hustled. Are you paying for part of your school? We love waitresses and caddies. It's great that people have summer internships when you're juniors and sophomores, and we really believe in it. But if you do other things, I just looked at a resume the other day of a young lady that goes to DC, and it was exceptional in every way. And the thing that made me put it in the pile that she got an interview was that she had worked at J. Crew the whole time she was at BC. Because, she had a 3.7, she'd been in the head of society and stuff. But there's little things that we're looking for. And then communication skills. You all take public speaking here. Take it seriously. You've got to be able to interact with people. So the interviews, there's basically, and this applies to whether it's the investment bank, wealth management, shared services, there's going to be 2 kinds of interviews. The first round, which will happen on campus here if it's a core school. If you're lucky enough to network your way on the trading desk, which a lot of you, Billy told you how many alumni are on the street, I highly encourage you to ask people if you can go sit on these trading desks, if your goal. And then, if in fact, like this happens a lot to me, please don't call me, but people will network and find somebody who can get you a first-round interview at the HR department. So, and then Super Day. How many people know what Super Day is? Okay, that's pretty good. So for those of you who don't know what it is, it's like, to me, when I had my Super Day back in 1986, it was the Super Bowl. This was the moment that I had worked for to get into the industry. And what happens is, there's usually 30 candidates. You're broken into 6 groups of 5. There will be someone who will interview you about each of the 5 core competencies. So the first thing you got to do is figure out which competency are they interviewing me on. As you go through it, it's like 2.5 hours. It's really long. It's grueling. If you're not prepared, you're going to get smoked. But the good news is, the next day, we'll probably call you and offer you a job if you beat the other 4 people in your group. I don't think people really understand that, because it's like, and those of you who are juniors, it's really, really important to get to Super Day and then get the job, because 98% of the people who were in Credit Suisse's program this summer got a full-time job. So now I put these slides I took right from the slides we used. So this is from the perspective of an employee of Credit Suisse. So as I said to you, this is what they read. So the first job is to make sure that they drill down on all the competencies. So we already talked about that. The reason I put this slide on here is that you need to do 80% of the talking. You have to control the interview. You get somebody like me who's very chatty, can talk about all kinds of different things. We could spend 20 minutes of me talking and 10 minutes of you talking, and then the person's you're gonna walk out of the room, and then we're not really gonna feel like we know you. In the opening of the interview, what's gonna happen is the person who's interviewing you is gonna look for something on your resume that you have in common. So they may see that, like, Gonzaga High School, or Del Barton, or, Ursuline High School, where I grew up and stuff. And they'll see tennis, or they'll see that, like, you speak another language, or you traveled in Argentina, but they'll find something in common to try to put you at ease, because they know you're nervous. Then, once we got you relaxed, you've got about a 20-minute window to sell yourself. And in that 20 minutes, you've got to, in the first round, recognize you've got 5 core competencies, and you've got 20 minutes to deliver a message about why you have leadership, why you have intellect, why you can figure things out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got to kind of like, I would suggest to you that you write an outline, take the core competencies and write an outline of exactly what your thoughts on each of them would be. And then at the end, the interviewer is going to be, right on 30 minutes. They're going to leave 3 or 4 minutes, and they're going to ask you if you have any questions. If you don't have good questions, forget about it. We're going to think you're an idiot. And then I won't read all this to you because we're going to give it to you in the slides. But they're going to. These are sample questions that we give to people that you may hear at different times. So leadership is being part of a group and how you led it or whatever. Results oriented is getting things done. I like the question second from the bottom. How did you prepare for this interview? Now you guys can say, or how many have been here 3 or 4 times? Well, there you go. You got something to start with, right? We talk about how the great Bill Donnell came down and showed you how to interview and such. Intellect, problem solving. I like the second one. Is if you're going to buy a house, how would you decide to pay for it? And they just like it's not like there's a right answer and wrong answer. It's the thought process. It's like sometimes you get some people in my derivative area that will ask you really crazy questions. And they'll be like, how many ping pong balls fit in a 747? I don't know the answer, I haven't got a clue. But I do know that, and there's books that you can get, that obviously Amanda's raising, she knows there's a book. I guys ask Amanda where to get the book. But it's not a matter of getting the right answer, it's a matter of what's your process. How did you think about it is all we care about. Collaboration it's really important. It's the no jerk thing. It's kind of like, how do you deal with adversity? We like things that people had to, my favorite story is when I asked someone, man, I said, tell me about adversity. And he told me that he could have he lived in Philadelphia, he could have gone to some school 2 blocks from his house, but he took 2 buses to go to some magnet school. So he spent an hour and a half a day commuting to school. And so I said, that's dealing with adversity. And then the last thing is that interest or knowledge of the industry. Now, I just put Credit Suisse is on here, but if I said, if we ask you, what do you think of Brady Dugan? What do you think of Credit Suisse's strategy? And you don't have any idea who Brady Dugan is, you're dead. Now, who knows who Jack Welch is? Who is it? Right. I once asked somebody 10 years ago, when he was the CEO, what they thought of something he had done the week before, and they had no idea who he was. It's like, now I get annoyed because you're wasting my time. All right, so some basic stuff, how to make a good impression. Handshakes are really important. The fish handshake, you know what I mean when I say fish handshake? Lose the fish handshake. If you're a woman, it's like, I will admit, men are impressed with women that have firm handshakes. Come up to you, look you in the eye, and shake your hand. None of this little French, thing. Just don't do it. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. How you dress is important. Billy and I were down here 5 years ago, and we were having a beer, and I don't know if that place is kind of still there, whatever. And some guy came up to me that was a year out of school that Bill knew somehow, and he'd had a 3.8. He was working for Price Waterhouse, and he was very articulate, very presentable, and he kind of talked me into like helping him get an interview because he wanted to change careers. So I helped him do this, And he comes in and you know, I kind of broke the rules a little bit and told him he was so good that they should skip the first round and trust me and send him for a super day. And the guy shows up in a shirt that I can think the color was eggplant. I mean, you don't believe like, the amount of ribbing I got over this. You know, it's pretty straightforward. You ever watch the presidential debates? What do they wear? They wear blue suits, they wear white shirts, they wear red ties. And Billy, I think, dressed for the interview today, right? Yeah, I didn't, but, right. You know, like, and the same thing for women, you know what's appropriate and what you know is what's not appropriate. This is kind of redundant, but, you know, it's you know, in this day and age, you know, things like smoking, you know, are just people, it just sets people off. You kind of think you're dumb if you smoke. And then things that'll kill the interview. And again, I'm not going to read all these to you, but I'm going to tell you a story that happened this summer. So I had a really important client call me and say that his son was a junior at the Wharton School, at Penn Wharton, and that, you know, would we, you know, get him a first round interview. So of course, you know, we got him a first round interview, and guess what? The kid was totally capable, good grades, knows what he's doing, all the core competencies, got offered a job, and then the week before the summer interns were supposed to start, you know what they have to do? What do they have to do? You worked at Goldman summer, what'd you have to do? No? You have to take drug testing. So then, I'm playing golf, and I finished playing golf one Saturday morning this summer, and I looked at my BlackBerry when I finished, and there's a message from the head of Human Resources saying, it's really important that I call her. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Saturday, what the hell happened? You know, so this idiot fails the drug test. So I'm just telling you the story that like this job, so I just told you 98% of the people in our summer program got jobs. The job pays $1,000 a week for 10 weeks. The job that he didn't get, that if he got through, pays $70,000 a year. Was it worth it? So, you know, things to think about. And so with that, I will pass it on to Todd, and you know, we'll do Q&A later. Okay?
Thank you, George. I don't have a whole lot of prepared remarks. What I want to do is talk a little bit about what George took you through and how it applies to some of the other careers that he talked about in that shared services. And I'm a little bit nervous to do this, so I'm going to try to go back, George, if I can. So stuff in the middle.
Yeah.
This is, nobody on Wall Street is hiring like crazy right now, right? There's an awful lot of talent out in the streets available, right? Lehman's gone, Bear's gone. A lot of that got picked up in a lot of different shops, but JP Morgan didn't keep 100% of Bear, Marquette didn't keep 100% of Lehman, and there's a lot of other shops that have folded, a lot of other funds and buy sides that have folded. So there is a lot of talent available, so no matter where you go to look for a job, you're up against a pretty competitive market right now, right? Certainly more so than it was 10 years ago. That said, there are still plenty of jobs on Wall Street. And there's plenty of careers on Wall Street, there's sorts that aren't sales and trading. And I've built a career over the last 16 years in one of those other areas. It's the one in the middle there in operations. I started as an intern my summer before my senior year. I turned that internship into a job, which, I mean, Bill said it, George said it, I'll say it again. That is your key to getting a career on Wall Street, right? Take that as the golden opportunity. So for all of you juniors and your freshmen and sophomores, right, your opportunity is this December, January, February, right? Getting yourself set up for an internship. And freshmen and sophomores, it's about a learning opportunity. Okay, for you juniors, this is your opportunity, right? Use it. The seniors, doors aren't closed, right? I've converted 100% of my Villanova summer interns to job offers this year. We will be back on campus, we'll hire a couple more, okay? But we're not gonna hire, 12 more, right? We're gonna hire a couple more. Places like compliance, legal, accounting, financial control, which is one that's sort of not there in the shared services, but it's the accounting side of our banks is in that shared services group. Right? For those of you who have accounting majors, finance majors, economics majors, right? That's what they hire. It's not just about sales and trading. These are other opportunities to learn different parts of the business. Chris May, who was listed on the list of attendees, Chris couldn't join me today, but I've worked with him for a number of years at Morgan Stanley. He started in our financial control group. Villanova accounting major, left here, joined Morgan Stanley, doing financial control for our trading businesses, and just use that as an opportunity to learn as much as he could about the front end of the business, and eventually moved to the trading desk and now trades utilities on our investment grade desk. Right? So there are ways to work to find opportunities when you start off with one of the shared service skills. The other thing I want you to remember though is any of you who has spent a lot of time and energy researching where you want to be on Wall Street and know that you definitely want to have George's job, you're probably not going to be happy with my job. They're very different. Okay? I'd be very shocked though if many of you at 20 years old or 21 years old are that sure of where you want to be, right? And look at all of these opportunities to learn an amazing business that has 7 or 8 different sides to it, and you've been prepared for all of that here at Villanova, right? So you've got this network of hundreds of people you're going to meet, right? Some of them sitting right here, but you've got every company that hires on this campus coming down to do analyst panels, information sessions, and they're going to do interviews, some on campus, and then invite you back to Super Days. Morgan Stanley, we do our Super Day here, right? So you get a little bit different experience because you're actually competing with your peers and classmates. And the reason is because I actually hire that many people from Villanova. We come and do it in one shot, right? I'll run an information session Wednesday night, Thursday first round, Friday second round, and we make decisions Friday night. The decisions are made that quickly, so as George said, when you're on, and it's an opportunity to convert. Things to make sure you do, take advantage of those information sessions. I'm going to be down here in a couple weeks with a bunch of Villanova alums to talk about what it's like working for us at Morgan Stanley. Other firms that are hiring are going to be here. Use that as an opportunity. You're relatively anonymous in that room, and you get to listen, and you get to ask a lot of questions and hear other people's questions. Right? Take advantage of that opportunity. How many of you have had internships on Wall Street so far? Okay. How many of you have friends that have had internships on Wall Street so far? Okay. So there's a significantly higher number in the second one. Use your friends as a resource. Ask them what they did. Ask them what the job was like. Many of them didn't have them on sales and trading desks. So they will have had opportunities to learn what's it like in legal and compliance, what's it like in tax, what's it like in operations, what's it like in financial control group. What does financial control group mean? Those are the accountants I was talking about before. Right? Learn what they did, ask them questions, figure out were there other Villanova alums that were there, were there other students that they met on that program that you can talk to. Right? Those are places where you're going to get information that it's not the same as trying to call George and get 20 minutes of his time. Because between now and interviews, you're not going to get it. Right? Unless George feels really generous. But find out where people worked, find out what they did, ask them questions. So when the question comes up, what did you do to prepare for this interview? Well, I met 3 of your former interns, right? And I asked them what they did. I interviewed them about their experience, and I know this is why I want to come work for you. Right? Those kinds of questions are going to differentiate you from other people, especially when you look at businesses outside of sales and trading, where you may have got a really good idea of what that business is. And again, I'll bet against you having that really good idea, so ask questions. If you're coming to interview for operations, know what operations is. Know what the difference is, right? Understand what it means to be an operations professional from a salesperson, from a trader. If you're interviewing for sales and trading, have an idea of what the difference is between those two, right? They're not the same. They can put together a lot, but they're not the same, right? Say, I want to be an iBanker. I don't know what an iBanker does, right? Think about that. These are all things you can do before you get to an interview, before you stick yourself in front of somebody and use up that 20 to 27 minutes you have to sell yourself, right? And you never really get your full 30 minutes, because I got to write down a bunch of notes and make a decision whether or not I'm calling you back. That takes up a couple of your 30 minutes. Use your network, right? So use your parents, your friends' parents, but don't do it to get an interview, right? At this point, in this time of year especially, you're not going to circumvent most of the systems for interviewing, right? But use it to get information. Don't ask them for an informational interview because it still sounds like an interview. Just tell me you want to ask some questions. You want to ask what it's like. You want to ask what the experience is like. Or can you refer me to somebody who is going to be closer to where I am in my career, i.e. entry level, that I can ask questions about what am I going to learn. Communication skills, and George listed a bunch of the things that are key interview killers. Remember who you're speaking to. I'm serious. I see a lot of smiles in the room. A lot of you guys have adopted a very different style of communications amongst your friends and your peers, and frankly, even maybe with your professors here on campus, because the world is different here than it is on Wall Street. Think about who you're talking to, and this is your 20 minutes to pitch you, right? You're selling you for 20 minutes. Know who your audience is, speak to them in their terms, right? So it's a huge deal to some people, and it's never going to help you to get that wrong, right? It may not hurt you, but it's never going to help you. And as George said, people are going to look for that connection, right? A a lot of companies, in Morgan Stanley, I only send Villanova alums back here to interview, right? You got that connection immediately when you walk in the room, because every person who's going to interview with me is a Villanova alum. Also means you can't bullshit us, okay? We've been through a lot of the same classes, we've done a lot of the same programs, had some of the same jobs, we know some of the same professors, we've been on the same exchanges, we've gone to London School of Economics program, Peggy Chaudhry, know what that is, right? I also know what it means to be an intern on a trading desk, and you weren't a junior trader, right? Those kind of things you have to be real careful that you sell yourself, but you don't oversell yourself, right? Don't be dishonest, right? I think the stuff here, these 5, right? The one that's missing, which is one probably remains, doesn't even need to be said, but integrity and honesty, right? If I have any reason to question that, it's over, right? Because that's something I can't teach and you can't fix. So that's what I've said. I think, to get the question answered, I think we'll get into some of the specifics about differences in jobs.
Thanks, Doctor. So you're getting some great advice, and I have to admit that a few of those thoughts were my thoughts as well. So I'm going to start with my random thoughts, which is really my conclusions. And I think there's some key things here, and one of which is something that George mentioned about questions. My first job was with the Chase Manhattan Bank, went up to New York, first time I ever stepped on Wall Street for Super Day, and several interviews all day long. The one thing I did was I had a robust list of questions, but I wound up focusing on 2 questions that I asked everybody. And by the end of the day, I was able to debate the last person very, very well. So I think, if you look at all those interviews in isolation, the first person didn't know I was talking about the same question with the second person and so on. So it worked out very well. And I'd say by the end of the day, that was really what got me the job, just because I was able to build on my own perspective on the answer, but also then build on what other people had told me and just through the prior dialogue. So questions are extremely important. As far as jobs are out there. There's been a lot of shift. There's within Wall Street, there's a lot of firms that you've never heard of that have cropped up. Much different from Europe, where there's still just massive firms and not that many smaller new broker-dealers. But over the last few years, there's a ton of them. I believe I heard earlier there's a sheet that you had that list on. But I did go on some of the major firms' website. I looked at my own website for Bank of New York Mellon, and we're looking for 967 employees right now. You don't qualify for all those jobs, but there's a ton of jobs. I looked at Morgan Stanley's site, 1,200 jobs. I looked at Bill's site, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, 4,900 jobs are available. So the jobs are out there. You don't qualify for all of them. You want to understand what the jobs are. You want to understand what the divisions are. I'll get in a minute to some of the shared services and some of the jobs in there. But you want to be able to, a piece of advice is when you are sitting down and talking to somebody, you want to be able to understand what lines of business that company is in and to be able to realize which line of business you're interviewing for. Is it asset management? Is it asset services? Is it fund accounting? Is it operations? Is it risk management? If it's risk management, is it credit risk management or market risk management? So you want to understand what line of business you're interviewing for, and broadly speaking, when you're questioning, certainly it'll come out in your questions, you want to be able to be versatile and ask different things about different lines of business. So websites have a tremendous amount of information about the lines of business, and you want to make sure you describe the lines of business how the company describes it. So asset servicing might be security services somewhere else, for example. The next thing I do want to talk about networking. So I spoke at a Villanova event for the interns in the summertime. So I want to yell at 14 people. I give out 15 business cards. I heard from one person 3 times, and I heard from 14 people 0 times. It's very important to network. I always give a business card to someone if they ask for it, and I always try to help. I do my best. You really want to make sure that someone, you don't know who they are, but they know who you are. It's very important that they know who you are. And I know one individual in this room very well. I spoke to him 3 times. The next thing, just to continue with the random thoughts. In terms of job search, you have plenty of resources here. One thing is, and I don't know if this term is used broadly, but you want to also use an aggregator. And you'll have plenty of opportunity to log into various websites for my firm and other firms, set up a profile, ID and password. And you can use Monster and Hot Jobs and other tools. I'm not that familiar with it. But there are aggregators out there that overlay all the sites. And they'll look for new jobs based on your keyword searches. And I don't know if this is new news or old news, so I apologize if it's old news. But it'll push out jobs for you based on keyword searches. I think you all know that. But if you want to make sure you're looking at an aggregator. So if you're looking for investment banking in a certain zip code, you can put that in there, and every new job that pops up with investment banking will shoot out to you positions. I happened to look on the web at one of my favorite aggregators. I put in the word finance, 10017, which is the zip code I've worked in for many years, and it's Midtown. The 22,000 jobs popped up. That's not only in that zip code, within a certain radius, but there are plenty of jobs out there. In terms of shared services, let's go back. So just looking at the bottom up, so risk is very, very important. And every financial institution, every company has risk management. So if you work for a large corporation, risk management might be how much insurance they have on their plant and equipment and things like that. If you work in risk management for a large financial institution, risk management might be how much risk the traders are taking, how much credit risk your corporate loan officers are creating in the loans that they are giving out. So within risk management, there's credit risk management, there's market risk management, there's operational risk management, and each area will have figureheads that make decisions, but there's plenty of people doing the analysis, and these are great jobs. Great way to learn about companies, great way to learn about industries. It's a fabulous start to a career, and there's all different career levels within risk management. There's quants, there's client-facing people that go out and do due diligence. There's a lot of great opportunities within risk management. Within operations, there's plenty of opportunities. Working for the Bank of New York, we have a sales and trading room, which globally is probably 1,000 people. We have 40,000 people working for the firm now. And most of it is in asset servicing. So it's all the security services out there, all the clearance, collateral management, prime brokerage, custody, accounting. We have thousands of accounting folks that work for the bank. And is it mutual fund accounting? Is it hedge fund accounting? In 2006, we couldn't keep any hedge fund accounts because the hedge funds were all hiring them away from us. I happened to pick up a prospectus that was on my desk, and there's on a transaction that we're looking at that's going to launch in a month or so. And I looked at all the service providers, and there's plenty of opportunity within the corporate trust environment. And this is an environment where you oversee assets, do a lot of compliance analytics, a lot of bond issues, equity issues. In years past, the CDO market was fairly popular. And we had hundreds of people doing all the analytics for CDOs, CLOs, very intelligent people. I recently moved into one of our clearance businesses. I talked to hedge funds for years and years about clearance and other things. I moved into one of our clearance businesses just recently. And I have a Wharton grad working with me doing client solutions. So we're trying to figure out connectivity. There's a lot of evolution within the financial markets right now on the operations side and clearance side. So somebody from Cornell, Wharton, there's plenty of intelligent people. There's a lot of great jobs. You could go into relationship management, client solutions, compliance, human resources, risk. We have all these people within this company this little clearing company that we just set up. So there's plenty of opportunity. One other thing is each company does have a treasury group that funds the company. So whether you work for a consumer products company or an auto company or a financial institution, they'll have a treasury group. And there'll be a treasurer, there'll be a short-term funding desk that'll look like a trading desk. There'll be plenty of people strategizing about credit spreads and what should the company issue, if at all, bond, debt, subordinated debt. So there's plenty of opportunity to work within treasury groups. And all these areas are being bulked up. The alternatives community, with what's happened over the last few years to Wall Street, the alternatives community has been hiring, was hiring like crazy. A ton of people from Wall Street to think about how to finance their securities positions, how to settle them, how to risk manage them. So sales and trading is great. It's a fabulous place. I spent 15 years there myself, trading derivatives and selling derivatives. Started in operations and systems training program within Chase. Worked for Chase for a few years, and saw how things settled, how products work. Then moved over to the sales and trading side. But I have to say that wasn't the plan. You get great careers within security services and operations, and that's basically I'm back in the clearance business now. And then, if you do sit in one of these seats, whether it's operations, compliance, legal, you'll be customer facing. So there's plenty of customer facing roles. Even if you don't want to, you'll be talking to clients. So, as I mentioned before, our hedge fund accountants talk to all the hedge funds. Our securities services folks talk to all the investment banks and banks about settling securities, financing securities, mobilizing their securities. We're spending a lot of time, as is Todd, with regulators these days. There's Dodd-Frank that was passed in July has created a stir within the securities world, and there's plenty of folks working on our relationship with the regulators, drafting documents, speaking with them, and they're not a client of the bank, but we're spending a lot of time customer facing, if you will. And then lastly, there's just a specific job. So there's a lot of relationship management roles out there, and it could be in security services or asset management or risk management. But within relationship management, to give you an idea of what you learn, if you work in a security services business, which could be clearance, settlement, risk management, operations, you'll wind up learning all the securities clearance systems. Securities lending, you'll learn a lot about the repo market, collateral management, margining, derivatives, collateral management. These are all very important things, and your early career can provide solid foundations for moves throughout your career. So that was it. Thanks very much.
Just, Tony, I wanted to ask you, because there's one area we didn't touch, because talking before, you started out in operations, if I remember correctly, and you ended up in investment bank. Can you talk a little bit about your career path to where you are today?
That's right. So to pick up on a couple of themes that the group has spoke about here today. As you saw from the screen, I graduated in 1988. In 1987, there was a firm called Drexel Burnham that maybe you studied about that was very similar to the events we went through in 2008. In 1988, there was no recruiting. There was no classes being done. Wall Street had laid off 25,000 people for a pool that was much smaller than it is today in financial services. And so I hustled. I went on every interview. I went to see every smaller, mid-sized firm that I could find. And I think as one of the themes that you're hearing today, I wound up joining a firm called Solomon Brothers, working in what their risk management group was. I wanted to work on the mortgage trading desk, right? I wanted to work with Lou Ranieri and trade mortgages. That job wasn't there for me. The job that I got was doing underwriting or credit analysis for customers, and then reporting back to the trading desks, do we want to do business with this counterparty? Are they financially viable? Well, within 2 years, I knew more about the customers and the clients than most of the traders did. And as the market began to turn and as the firm began to hire, I was in a very right position to be pulled into the group as it began to grow because of what I was doing within the firm. So I think the theme that you're hearing up here today is that this is a very volatile industry. The firms are large and growing, but when you think about shared services, people interact throughout all groups within the firm, whether it's corporate finance, it's sales and trading, it's investment banking. As the firms begin to recover from this and look for people, they look internally first. And so to be able to get into the door, to network internally, to meet people is invaluable in this sort of market. And I urge all of you as you go through the process to try and look for positions to get in the door, to enable yourself to be in a position as the market recovers and those 40,000 jobs that went away get added back into the system, that you are in the game, right? It is very important right now to be in the game, because if you're not, next year there'll be more graduates, the year after there'll be more graduates, it just becomes more challenging to get into the system. And I think what you're hearing from my colleagues, that there's very much pride in these institutions. Morgan Stanley tends to hire Morgan Stanley jobs, right? Credit Suisse hires Credit Suisse. They tend to build within their firm. So look for those opportunities. I'd also say you're young. You're going to manage your career quite a bit as you go through these firms. Your interests are going to change. You're going to learn about a lot of things. So being young affords you the opportunity to move around within these organizations. But again, the emphasis is get in, find a spot within the firm, and begin to build on it